Hi, it's Ingrid with Caratootie, and I'm here with a Flipbook tutorial that I promised for the envelope style flipbook that I showed in my last video. Here, what I did is I just grabbed some embellishments and papers that I wanted to showcase in this flipbook, and my theme was kind of like a space or celestial theme. So, and these are the pattern papers that I had picked out. So mostly I want it to be blue with that pop of hot pink that I'm showing there. I'll also be using gelatos. For the base of the book, I'm actually making my own envelopes using 8.5 by 11 cardstock that you see there. And I will write down the dimensions that you need down below, so don't worry about that. But what you're going to do first is you're going to take your 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, and on the short side, I guess, you are going to score down 1 inch, and then you're going to flip it over and score down 1 inch again. Then you're going to flip it on its side, and you are going to score at 3.5 inches. And then you're going to flip it again on the other side. There you go. And you're going to score at 2 inches, at 2 1/4 inches, and then at 2.5 inches. And you're going to go ahead and do that with all 4 of your sheets of paper. And if you want to do less, you can do less. For this, I used 4. So you can see here I'm just going through and quickly scoring them. And then once you score them, you're just going to fold them at the crease. And a quick tip that I had for you is on the side where it's got the 2, 2 1/4, and 2.5 score lines, what I did was I kind of moved, and I think I'm out of focus on that, but I kind of rolled it around to get the crease lines, and then I did one at a time with my fingers, and then went through and did it with the bone folder. So that might help. It seemed to be better the first time that I did it. It was harder to get those since they're only a 1/4 inch apart. So that's self-explanatory, as you could see here, is just go ahead and go through and just make sure you have good creases. And if you don't have a bone folder, you can always use like the edge of a ruler, or even a pair of scissors on the side where your fingers go in. You just want something that's not metal because it'll cut through the paper, but something that maybe is plastic or has a smooth edge to it. Also, if you don't have a scoring tool, you can always use your cutter and use maybe like a mechanical pencil and just run it down your line. It's a little harder, but it will work if you don't have it. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to, and I left the template out, and I don't know if this is something that might be helpful to you, is to make a template and then to do it, at least for the first couple times. It was helpful for me to know which way my cut lines were going. One thing I wanted to show is to make sure that you are on the inside of the score line. If not, you're going to see that little edge, and then actually it's not going to match up nicely. So just make sure you're on the inside of the line, and you are going to cut out those 4 corners, and you're going to angle it. I believe they're both downward. We'll see here in just a second. Or yeah, they both, you can see there the edges. And what that will help you do is when it folds in, it'll get rid of some of the bulk. So, and originally in my template, I had rounded the edges on all of them, but as I was doing this, and this is actually the second time I shot this, the first time I'm actually using a black cardstock to make the book that I'll be working on in a minute, and you'll see that, but my camera didn't want to film, and so I had to redo it. But the good part about it was that I figured out that I didn't have to corner round all of the edges. And you can see on the template that's there with the manila folder looking color, you can see that I had rounded all the edges, and it's unnecessary. You really only need to round one of the edges of the short side, the 2, 2 1/4, 2 1/2 side, and because that will be actually your flap. On the rest of them, on the longer side, which is the 3 1/2 score line, then those can get rounded, and just use your preference. If you like the 1/2 inch better than the 1/4, I used a 1/2 inch here, and so that's what I'm doing here. And then I'm just going to glue down the edges, and instead of putting the adhesive on the flaps, I found that it was a lot easier to place it on the score below the 3 1/2, because then you didn't have any extra glue. What you're going to do to start building it is, remember, leave the one that you did that has the 2 1/2 with the 1/4 rounds on the side, because that's going to be your last piece. You're going to start building the envelopes butt to flap, and make sure that you're outside of your score lines that you did. And you're just going to keep them in the order that you see here, going where your flap is on the right hand side. And you can see here where it's already made the envelope. If you want to use less envelopes and you want to use maybe 3 or 2, then that works as well. So here's the papers that I did, and I'm just going through them to figure out which colors I want to use for the cover and the back, and so I start with that. And you can see there that my book is going to be black, like I had said earlier. So I decided that I'm going to use that paper there for the front and the back cover, and it's like a dark blue with paper airplanes on it, and I thought that that was cute for it. And I'm going to use this other paper that I had that's like I guess it's like the stars pattern, like a constellation pattern, and that'll be my flap. And I will have the dimensions down below of all the cuts. You will actually need to cut 4 pieces total of the back, or the outsides, and 4 pieces total of the insides. Since I did the same for the front and the back, then I only need to do 2 more cuts on those, and then I still have to do my 4, and that's what I'm finishing up here. Then I'm also going to take any extra papers that I wanted to cut up, and I maybe wanted to use like that paper there that has the numbers on it, and I cut that up. And then I'm putting any papers that I thought maybe would be good accents on the side there. And I really wanted to stick with just the stuff that I had picked out and try not to go and get more papers, and just kind of use what I had there. And that seems to be a problem sometimes when there's too many supplies, and then you kind of lose direction. And I found that this book went pretty quickly because of that. And I didn't know how I'd like doing the darker colors, but I think it's one of my favorite books to date, and I'm really glad that I picked the colors to go with it. It's definitely not my usual style. So here I am going to round the corners on the flat piece, and the way that I did the dimensions, the cuts, I left a black edge. So if you want to make them a little bit larger, I think I left about a 1/4 inch on each side. So if you want to make it a little bit larger, or you don't want any of your envelope to show, then you can adjust your cuts accordingly. So here I am just deciding what papers I want with what. And remember, sometimes it helps for you to fold it in the way that it's going to go, so that you can see what papers coordinate with what. So I wouldn't want necessarily 2 blues right next to each other. And so I put some of the yellow papers in between so that it would kind of break it up. And then also that brown with the little arrows. And really, it's just your personal preference of how it looks. And honestly, once you fill it up with all the embellishments or whatever, however you're going to decorate it, you actually see very little of the pattern papers below. And here I took a piece of the Heidi Swap paper that says choose happy, and I just like that choose happy as my first page when you first open up the book, and so I just cut it down, and I cut into the words a little bit, but it was okay, it turns out. And then I still wanted an edge of the pattern paper that I had below. On top, I'm just layering it with some embellishments, a little die cut that I made on my silhouette of a gem, and then some stars. And that is going to be the theme that keeps the book cohesive, is that I'm using the gems and I'm using stars. Also gold, and then as you saw before, the dark blues with the pop of pink. And that's the other thing that keeps the book cohesive, is that I used a piece, whether it was large or small, of that hot pink paper on every page. And so this one's almost done, and I kept this one pretty simple. It's the first page, and I think the rest of them are a lot more embellished. So here was other, and I believe that's Heidi Swap as well, a 5 with the star, which again, the star, and the hot pink paper. And I just thought, I'm not really sure why I thought of the number, but I thought the colors went in the star, and so I just went with it. And so here I'm just layering papers on top of each other that I think go well. And honestly, there's no rhyme or reason. It was just what was appealing to my eye at the moment. And usually I just play around with it to see what I like, and sometimes I just look at it before I glue it down or staple it down to see if it's cohesive, if it's appealing, and whatnot. And most of the time it's happy accidents that happen, or that originally my view was that I was going to put a flower and then the flower never makes it. In this case, the flower made it. So just using a tiny attacher, I stapled everything together, and then I will glue everything down, mainly using my ATG gun. But of anything that I had stapled, then I am using the Scores tape, and I think that's the brand that I'm using there, but that kind of gives it a harder hold. I'm also using the Eileen's Tacky Glue. I do have the quick dry glue, but I had that on my table, so I just use that. And that's for anything that needs a little bit extra, like for example, the wood veneer, that star that I have on the bottom there. That way I can make sure that it's going to stick. On this page, I decided to stick down some Project Life cards using washi, and that top one is one of my favorites, and it says Dream Big in gold. And so that's keeping the gold cohesiveness, and I am putting them down using washi, and I'm also backed that sentiment up with the hot pink paper with a stamp that I fussy cut, and that I will also be sticking down with washi, and then that way my pen pal can always use those later. And what I did there is when I'm using the washi, I didn't realize at first that if it was longer than the page, then it wouldn't fold right, so I had to cut it down a little bit. But that's about the end of that page, and it was a pretty easy page. Now in my book, I have not added, and I will not add in the video, any of the goodies or the tag or the letter, but this was just the bones of the book that I'm doing. So I'm just finishing up that page. Just decided to add some deli paper that I just kind of layered on top of each other, and I wanted to make sure it kind of looks like maybe waves or clouds, maybe even. And I'm going to take another die cut that I had cut out with my silhouette and layered it over the staples, and I thought that that gave it a cute look. Now I'm taking my watercolor paper from Cosmo Cricut, and I wanted to make kind of a little nebula, and I'm using paper that has the gold on it. And I'm not sure if any of you have used this paper or not, my first impression was that it was daunting there's a lot of white on it, and so you have to think about how you're going to cut it, but the more I use it, the more that I like it. And here what I did was trace around the cap of my water that I use for watercolors, and I made a circle, and then all I did was just randomly I placed that dark blue, the light blue, the hot pink, and that neon yellow just in sporadic form, no rhyme or reason with it. And I'm just taking the water and just mixing it around, and I had to do it a few times. Now that I look at the video playback, I wish that I would have used maybe more of the light, but I was trying to go with a darker color. I thought at one point of taking a different watercolor and adding black, but I didn't do it. Instead, I took some gold spray, and I sprayed it, which I ended up liking that a lot. But I will actually not use a lot of it. And it's funny because on camera you can really tell those flowers from the camera angle, but in person you can't really see the little white and gold flowers that much. So here I took an embellishment page that has some little journaling spots, and I decided to cut out some of the pieces that were dark because I feel like they go with the page to the right of it. Has some of the washi. I have the one washi that has the little black stars, and then the other is the black with the polka dots, and so these papers kind of coordinate and brought it together. And so what I'm going to do here is just layer those on top of each other and attach them with a tiny attacher. The embellishment that you see there was one that I had made with using my scraps, and so I just have those in a drawer and I pull them out whenever I can use them, and then some of them go to pen pals. So I added a hot pink little star sticker to tie in the hot pink, and then that constellation paper, I added just a little tiny strip of it, and I'm playing around with this silver gem, but it doesn't ever make it. I do add another gold star though, and it kind of plays on the rules of 3 with the hot pink star, the gold star, and then that glitter heart. So I feel like it balances out the page like that. And again, I'm using a little bit of stronger adhesive here because it's heavier since I clustered it together with the tiny attacher, not with glue. And so that'll hold it a little bit stronger. So I played around a little bit with this page, and I felt like the bottom needed something, and I put some other stuff, and then I decided finally to just add some strips of washi tape to give it a little bit of color. Then my last interior page on here, I decided to use more of the constellation paper, and actually I think that I use it all up right here, and I use the hot pink, and that gem that didn't make it on the right hand side is going to make it on this side. I also took some deli paper, which adds a lot of interest because of the texture, and I just folded it up. As you could see there, I did like a fan fold, and then I unfolded it a little bit and attached it down. That arrow there is a silhouette cut that I made, and the top is a sticker, but I layered it on some of the yellow paper, the Heidi Swap, the Choose Happy paper. I layered it on the back so it actually shows the white, and then I just attach it all with the tiny attacher, and now I'm just going to glue it down to the page all in one piece. And I'm pretty happy with this page. Those pearls never made it. I was thinking that they're probably a little bit too bulky for the book, and so they never make it. This little arrow that I made it in my last book, I wanted to put it on that page, but it doesn't make it, but it will make it in the book before it's over. And it's actually one of my favorite embellishments. They're so cute. And I will be doing a video showcasing how to make them because they're super easy. But another page that I really liked the look of, and again, it's not really my style, but I really enjoyed making this book and I love the way that it came out. So I actually start working on the back cover at this point with layering some stickers, some circles. That was another thing that I had sketched out. I have a composition notebook that has all my ideas of what I'm going to work on next. And that was one of the things I wrote next to the space book, was that I wanted circles in there. So, and stars, maybe circles like the planets. So here I'm just layering some stickers, layering some sentiments, some paper. I added a little piece of the washi tape on top to tie in the black and white. And since I used that washi before, I thought that that was a good mix. Then I'm just stamping Best Day Ever. And then I realized that, and I'm working on the flap, but what I didn't realize yet is that I missed a page. So you'll see I'll go back and work on the last page. I added some rhinestones up at the top, and that's when I realized that I missed the last page. But I added some rhinestones at the top for the flap as well. And here I'm just taking two page flags that I just cut myself, and I'm adding them with washi, some of the washi that I used also in the book, and I am taking some acetate that I stamped an ampersand on with Stays On and just adding it. And here comes the little arrow that I said, and I'm just putting it at the bottom. And actually it ends up being one of my favorite pages, but it was one of the most simple ones. So I know that the front, I definitely wanted it to be pink, and I'm playing around with it, and then I cut it down, and I'm not going to put quite as much pink. And the front, I don't know about you guys, but the front always seems like the harder to decorate because it's the first thing that someone sees. And so this one I fiddle around with a little bit more than the rest of them, and then it ends up being pretty simple because I, at the last minute, end up using a butterfly die cut. And I really like the way that it is. And although it's not space, I figured it was, you know, something in the air. And so that's it. You'll finish watching me add that stuff, but that's the end of the book, and I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed making this one, and I will see you soon. Look out for another video in the next week or so, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.